recreating a bunch of Bible stories as video games with various levels could be a lot of fun.
Oh man,
that would be funny.
Fun. So if anyone knows,
what comes to mind is like,
God, Abram and Sarah. He's like, that's not my wife, that's my sister, or like, I mean, all the ones that we've talked about, and it's like,
I feel like you just talked about an anime game.
Yeah,
that's my sister.
You got to level up your speechcraft so you can lie better.
Yeah, right.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Casey.
I'm Sam.
And we're joined by my buddy Jesse.
Hey, what's going on?
Good to have you back, man.
Yeah,
always a pleasure.
I'm pumped to have you back. When Casey mentioned you were joining us, I was very excited. I feel like it's been a while since I talked to you, and I figured I could use another week off before talking to Jeremiah again. You know,
right? Yeah, I mean, thought he was.
Yeah, the last time you were on, Jeremiah was here too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Bogart,
so you know exactly why you could use a break.
Yeah.
You've had a long one. How's it been?
That's been good.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Still live in the same place, so do the same job. It's all the same.
So if you didn't catch that episode, I mean, it was a while ago. It was like
about
first
a year
year
ago.
we were doing this. But Jesse and I are like friends from, well, we met when I was in 4th grade.
Yeah, in Sunday school, right?
Yeah, pretty much the only two people there that were the same age. So, we hit it off as besties.
Oh, yeah.
You had no choice but to be friends because it was that or just be desperate and lonely forever.
Yeah.
We're both ACE graduates.
Oh, God.
I didn't think we were going to bring all this up.
Yeah. It's an embarrassing history.
Yeah, I don't know how many people that are with us now listen to like some of the old stuff. But basically, we went to this tiny little Christian school that, like, at its peak while I was there, it had like 80 or 90 kids.
Yeah, it was K through 12.
I went there K through 12, and I want to say the most I ever even saw was like 120. Like, there was still not a lot of kids, and that was packed
before my time. Then, yeah, because it just kind of like bled itself dry from there. Pretty much when I started going there, it started drying up on the vine.
Yeah. How many people were in our school when we graduated? Like 40 kids or something like that?
Yeah, it was like somewhere in the 40s.
I remember there was like a couple of years where they had meetings at the church to see if we would even keep the school open. Do you remember that?
Yep. Yeah, like our graduating class had like 8 people in it. Yeah. So when you've got 40 some students K through 12 and 8 of them are all leaving at the same time, everybody's kind of like looking at their feet going, well, is this God's will after all?
Right.
It's such a small school. I mean, it's Bible based, so they carried that tradition on with like very biblical forms of dating, which was like your half sister and your cousin and things like that.
Right.
There just weren't a lot of options, right?
Yep.
Well, it was also in Fowlerville, which is it's par for the course there.
Yeah, it's hilarious when you think about the fact that like no one dated anyone while we were there. There was like 2 of the girls that were about our age had boyfriends at different points, but like none of the rest of us dated anybody during high school, like in the school or outside the school.
Right. Yeah.
It's so strange.
It is really, well, I mean, there were no options.
Okay. Yeah. So so joke, it's no options, but when you have no options, suddenly things that wouldn't normally be options seem like options.
Well, no, but the ones that you think might be options are off limits because that's what they want. So
okay, so the ones who actually were desirable were off. Like, why were they off limits? They were dating somebody, or they were too young,
or
too old,
kids, and they weren't into it.
Okay,
everybody was just. It was like there was just so like. We didn't go through like the True Love Waits thing officially, but there was like so much of this like, well, why would you date? anyone during high school, like, because you're going to go to college and you can't get married until like you're done with college. So if you date anyone right now, you're basically just like setting yourself up to like ruin your purity.
Yeah, that's pretty
So
much it.
yeah,
Logically
so
consistent.
I think everybody wanted to date people, but like everybody felt bad that they wanted to. Pretty much.
Your version of
It's
dating was like my equivalent of like having a condom on you before you were married. It was like you're setting yourself up to sin.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, it really like I've always said this about the like our school is that when nobody's doing anything bad, like just the it's all like bad is relative. So like
yeah,
smaller things become like
a
of
big
more
deal.
and more importance. So like everything scales that way. Like if nobody's doing drugs or getting drunk in the school, then like somebody not wanting to tuck their shirt in then becomes like I'm really concerned about the direction that so and so is headed.
Yeah,
Right.
yep.
Anyone who makes any alternative style choice at all just to stand out and not just blend in like a complete normie like everyone
Yeah,
else,
well,
it's like you have to worry about. And everyone throws up an ejaculatory prayer for them.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that? You saw it, right, Casey?
I saw the
That's
post. It took me a minute to figure out what that was even about.
Yeah.
I did not see that.
Okay. I wanted to talk about it for a second. Because
Is it Instagram?
this is this is on Wikipedia. It's a
Oh, okay.
article for ejaculatory prayer. And it says in Christian piety, an ejaculation, sometimes known as an ejaculatory prayer or aspiration, is a short prayer in which the mind is directed to God on any emergency. A sigh, a devout aspiration, a holy ejaculation will often pierce the sky and reach the ear of omnipotence, then a long set exercise of prayer. With
if this had been common lingo when we were growing up, it would have been a lot easier to not get caught.
I gotta go through the second paragraph because it's just I honestly can't tell if some dickhead like us like wrote this and it's
Right.
just
It feels like it.
Like
but
it's a joke.
There's too many footnotes though where you're like this is too well cited to be. I mean, that is like a real conspiracy and it's the best joke ever. But within Roman Catholicism, some common ejaculations include the Jesus prayer, the Fatima prayer of the Holy Rosary, come Holy Spirit, ironically,
this has to be on purpose,
and eternal rest. In Methodism, some common ejaculations include praise the Lord, hallelujah, and amen.
Others include It's a Big, Big House by Audio Adrenaline.
Oh my God. Absolution includes the pastors offering ejaculatory prayers after penitents recite the Confiteor. I don't know what that means. Either way, I loved it. And it seems like a lot of people did too, because it's just, I really need to look into it more to see if someone really did write this jokingly, but it is well cited. So I don't know. I guess we all thought we ejaculated a lot when we were younger, but incidentally, every ejaculation was followed by another ejaculation.
Yeah, I was just saying it was twice as much.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. God forgive me.
Okay, I was thinking about this today, because Jesse and I did so many of them. But were you ever in any Christmas plays?
You talking to Sam or me?
Sam.
Me.
Oh, I know you were.
No, sorry. I didn't respond with you.
Yeah.
Christmas plays. No, not that I recall. The only plays I can recall doing weren't really plays, but I did the VBS skits when I was in high school for like the younger kids, and oof, those were embarrassing. But I don't think I did Christmas plays, unless you count me being an angel in kindergarten.
Man, So okay, but do you remember any of the VBS skits that you did?
Yeah, it's hard to recall like some of the themes. It really actually it's I would have thought I remembered it well until now where I'm trying to recall it, but it had to have been like related to time travel. In archaeology, like you're an archaeologist, it's like Christian archaeologists who time travel back or something like that, and then they see some biblical story, kind of like those
It's
old
like
cartoon movies that we watched where those
You
kids
dressed
got
like
stuck to the
Indiana
quicksand.
Jones.
it's like you teleport in the skit. You teleport back in time with an AR-15 to save Jesus.
Yeah, that was
It's like the butterfly effect, but it's the Bobert effect.
Yeah. Has somebody made that? That has to be it. That needs to be something.
I'd watch it. I'd definitely play it if it was a video game.
Yeah. Oh my god.
The Bobert effect coming to PS2.
Just like the the game we were talking about in the Discord was a Left Behind. The Left Behind series was made into a video game series.
I can't believe they did that.
So cool.
Is that new or is that
No,
old?
Old.
Okay.
I remember when it came out a little bit. Old PC game. It's like a real-time strategy game, and you would but it was there was a lot of controversy around it because it was like the Christians, the atheists, and then like some neutral faction, also known as the lukewarm faction. And no, I don't think that's
The
true, but
Green Party.
they would like the Christians would like if people didn't convert, you would kill them and shit like that, and that didn't go over super well.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I remember playing the
I would
old
love to play it.
That would be pretty funny. I remember playing the old like NES Bible games. Do you remember those? Like they'd have them at the family Christian bookstore.
Dude, the Noah's Ark game was so hard.
Oh, it's awful. I think it's impossible.
I think it is. It's so difficult.
I listened to a podcast where they play like terrible games, and they played that game in one of the episodes. They complained about it, just talk a bunch of shit about it.
That's
pretty
I
funny.
think I watched the Angry Video Game Nerd at one point do like a playthrough of those, because there was that one, and then there was Moses.
Yeah, there was a Moses one. There was a Joshua one.
Oh, that must have been brutal.
You like threw music notes at people and like made them pray or something like that. That's how you defeated them.
The Moses one, you're driving a little wicker boat and you have to like dodge raw sewage in the river like Frogger. Dude, I would love to play like a Dynasty Warriors style Samson game though.
Yeah.
Where you just like ripping through crowds of Philistines.
You're like, upgrade. You got your jawbone of a donkey now.
Turn them inside out.
Yeah.
This is what it would be
You'd
nice
have to have a paintball mode though.
Yeah, because you can't have blood. I remember with like video games for N64, it would be like I would talk it up to my parents because I'm like I couldn't play games with blood in it for a while, and it was like, well, you can turn off the blood. You can even do paintball mode, and it's like you're just playing with paintball guns. It's cool, and they're just like, okay. I feel like they just couldn't have
talking
cared
about
that
GoldenEye.
much. Yes, that is GoldenEye. That's right. But going back though, well, so first actually, I feel like this is the time, maybe Chat GPT or whatever these AIs could do it for you, just ones that write code. But I feel like now would be a fun time to know how to do, because doing like those pixelated NES style games isn't probably overly difficult these days. And just recreating a bunch of Bible stories as video games with various levels could be a lot of fun.
Oh man,
that would be funny.
Fun. So if anyone knows,
what comes to mind is like,
God, Abraham and Sarah. He's like, oh, that's not my wife, that's my sister, or like I mean, all the ones that we've talked about. And it's like,
I feel like you just talked about an anime game.
Yeah,
that's not my wife, that's my sister.
You got to level up your speechcraft so you can lie better.
Yeah, right.
Even Adam and Eve, dude, just that story as a video game would be funny.
But with like Adam and Eve, but with BMX XXX graphics.
Yeah. One of your like missions is just to name a bunch of animals, and you get to type them all in.
Like, the world's worst game.
But it's like they don't have the keyboard yet, so you just either press down or up to cycle through the entire alphabet, and then you have to go down 26 times to get to lowercase letters.
Oh man!
Anyway,
that should be a thing.
Your Christmas pageant. Did you have a Christmas pageant story you wanted to get
plays
into?
in general? Well, I was just trying to think of like all the different plays that we did over the years. Because you posted a picture in the Discord of you and I in like cowboy gear.
That was our junior year or our senior year? That was junior year.
I think so, because I feel like I played an old man in the one our senior year.
Yeah, I had a smaller part the senior year too.
But you were a singing cowboy in the
I didn't like it.
Do you remember what your song was?
Oh, absolutely not. I couldn't. If you played it now, I would not even reckon. I wouldn't think I had even heard it before. I do remember though, for that play specifically, we bought some like toy guns to like wear because we're supposed to be cowboys, you know. And I sat in my room for like, it must have been 4 or 5 hours just practicing spinning the guns so I could get it right when we went on stage.
That is such a you thing to do.
The real Daniel Day-Lewis move of you. You walked around your house in character for weeks on end.
Put the whole getup on and just walked around with my guns. Pretty funny. I'm pretty sure my mom returned the pants that I wore for that play. She's like, "Don't get them dirty. I'm just gonna take them back." He's like, "Who's gonna wear white pants?" Nobody.
Back to Mervin's with them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then 3 years later, Showbread made a career out of it.
Yep.
Pretty much. So I remember when I was it was before I moved to Michigan. So I would have been in like first grade, maybe. I was in this play at church. I don't think it was a Christmas one because it was Olympics themed. And I wish I could remember how that ties into the gospel. I just don't. But
I'm sure it was a stretch.
Oh, guaranteed. Well, like, so we were like not too far outside of Atlanta. In 1996, they had the summer games in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
And so it was like leading up to that.
Yeah, there's a connection there somewhere.
I sang a song, and I remember my solo.
Oh my god,
you can sing it?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, it was like I really fought hard for the part too, because I was like, because it was like you kind of had to sing it fast. It was almost like a rap, you know. So I was like, I want that part. So I memorized it. I memorized it so good that it's still in there, imprinted on the back of my eyelids.
Okay. So,
dude, I can't remember any.
All right, so here it goes.
All right.
Skating races, hockey chases, basketball and track, tennis teams, balance beams, skiing back to back, polo matches, baseball catches, volleyball and luge, triathlon, decathlon, horseshoes and canoes, discus throwing, rowboat roaming, swimming, sailing, skeet. The gymnastics are fantastic. Who can miss a meet? Boom.
Where's Jesus in all of this?
You just needed a beat behind that.
I like the part that ends with skeet. I wish it was like skeet motherfucker.
I can't remember my mom's birthday, but that's in there. It's like it's April. How old's your parents?
I don't know how old anybody I'm related to.
Skating races, basketball.
You have to like think back to the year that you were in that and subtract to get to like, because something eventful happened. It was like, oh, that was the same year I got that part was my mom's 35th birthday. So she's everything relates back to that moment in your history.
Yeah, it's my 9/11.
I have a sad story for you. In 40 years, when you're in an old folks' home, that's going to be the only thing that you keep repeating over and over.
George Costanza's gym teacher. It stands you.
God, that's true too, man. That's
someone
it. That's
around
what you have to look forward to.
Basketball races. Like, what is he saying? What is basketball races?
The most annoying old man in the kook's nest.
You're gonna be like Salamanca from Breaking Bad, just flicking that bell, just dinging it over and over again, repeating those lines. He can't talk, but he can sing this song. It's like those people who like get their faces bashed in, and like they can sing and run backwards, but they can't walk or talk.
Yeah, no, the I feel like the Christmas play thing, or the just plays in general, and like a lot of the choir stuff and everything, it was like there was nothing else to do. Like, there was so few things to do that you wanted to do those things, and then you always regretted like saying you would do it.
Oh
yeah, absolutely.
That's why I did VBS skits. I'm like, okay, like some of my friends are doing it, and it's something to do every day because it's summer and I'm homeschooled, which means I just stay home still, like it with even less to do. And that's mostly why I signed up for that stuff, because you're like, it's just it's something to do, and you get to you do that for a little bit, and then you hang out with your friends or whatever. But God, I remember every time doing it, like getting to like the day of, and then you look out and you're like, there's more people here seeing me do this than I was expecting. There's so many people are going to remember this on Sunday morning, and they're going to say something about it because it's church. They're going to be like, hey, great job in the VBS skits. And all I'm going to think about is how I forgot to wear deodorant that day and my armpits were sweaty. That's a real thing.
You're making the puppet stink.
Yeah, that was that pre-puppetry or post-puppetry? VBS skits might have been pre-puppetry.
God, I remember so many times doing like being guilted into doing something because there wasn't enough people to do it, whether it was school or church or like anything. It was like, well, we don't have enough people for a choir. So I'm like, well, that means I have to do it. Thanks.
Dude, I don't know, but I know I've obviously mentioned doing puppet ministry before, but I went to like a conference, a puppet ministry conference, like weekend long thing once.
Serious? You workshopped your puppet ministry?
Yeah, and there's like,
hold your hand like this. Hold your hand like this.
Honestly,
you're moving your lips too much.
They don't see your face. I'm behind the curtain. Yeah, but it's really working both those hand sticks is it kind of reminds me of like when I first started learning how to use chopsticks. You're like, God, this is complicated and I can't do anything right. But
I feel like that's opportunity for an SNL skit for like horrible job operating the hands and stuff. I don't know.
Well, in Sesame Street and things like that, they usually have like, I think,
like
at least
two
with
people,
some of the bigger puppet, they'll like be two people doing it. But like, I mean, you go and you look at all the booths, and there's like the different songs and skits and discs, like, because it's all like, I mean, it's skits that you can do, so you could do the voices, but then some of them are on CD, and you just like pop them in and you do the movements.
So you follow along. Yeah,
but God, I mean, it was a convention center full of big time fucking nerds.
Was it specifically Christian puppetry?
Yeah. It was like at a church and shit.
A lot of hearts on fire out there, huh?
Yeah. Because we did it. We ended up putting one on. We have like this big fair. I think it was it Sterling? Maybe it wasn't the big one. It was like the Sterling Fair or something like that, which is one of the bigger ones in my area. And we had a whole booth where we did our Come to Jesus puppet show, and would try to like, get 6-year-olds to accept Christ against their parents' will.
I feel like talking to the crowd that's attending that conference would be scary. Be like, I've got a real heart for kids. It's like, I've got a real heart on for kids.
Yeah, that is kind of that's certainly the vibe.
Just, do you remember, wasn't there like a couple or something that would come through that did puppet stuff?
We had a few different ones. I remember there was like these two ladies that traveled together that I swear my mom used to tell me she thought were lesbians. And she like made a huge deal about it because they would come through like every year. And she's like, well, I don't know. They just spend so much time together. Because they would just travel the country and like go to all these same churches every year, I think.
Did they have a look or a vibe?
What Christian schools people
Not
would
really.
do.
They were just kind of like old, kind of like hippie looking ladies. I feel like I feel like they came for like a vacation Bible school or something. They would come through, and they always have like ventriloquism and like playing water glass circle thing. You know what I'm talking about? It makes
That's
like the
right.
ringing.
I can't picture what they looked like, but I do remember them.
Yeah.
I know I've brought it up before, but like I would love to just have like a reference guide, like a coffee table book with a page for each of the weirdos that would just travel around to different churches.
Dude, we used to have it. Do you remember when they would send out the like, I don't know if it was like a bulletin or whatever every year, and it had pictures of like all of our missionaries.
Yeah. That's right, because there was like all the foreign missionaries.
Yeah.
And some of them were weird, but there was more
in my life.
Right. And our church is probably sending them like $30 a year, but yet they're still putting them in the guide as like, well, we support them.
Oh, dude,
the church support Subway
for
sandwich coupon
has to be a joke sometimes, just to like put people's faces in. I can't remember if I've mentioned this, but it would have been a while ago. But when I was pretty active in a church when I lived in Lynchburg, still, my wife and I kind of like acted as like a liaison with one of our missionaries in the church, and they were basically experiencing catastrophic flooding and needed extra money and shit like that. And we were just we floated it by the church. Like, maybe we could like try to raise a little bit of money for these people that we, talk about all the time and put on all of our halls, like in several places to show you how much we support their mission. And they're just like, well, we don't really like to do love offerings because then like anyone could ask for one. I'm just like, yeah, but isn't that the point?
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was cool. That guy was a total doofus. He was one of those. I don't want to like. I'm not here to judge the way people look and live their life, but I will for a second here because it's like the amount that you can judge somebody for the way they look and how they act. It's like, especially how they look. I feel like it's a direct proportion to how much of a fucking loser they are. Like if you're a pastor and you're a shitty pastor, then we can talk about how you look. Otherwise, look, if you're a nice person, it should be off limits. But this guy was, he was the pastor's son. So he was like a shoo-in for like the job essentially. So he got Sunday night church, and that's where he touched on the controversial issues. It was like, can Christians drink? Is it okay to be alone in a car together with someone of the opposite sex? Like really edgy stuff like that. And
so dad was a little bit country and son was a little bit rock and roll.
That honestly 100%. Like dad was like, listen up, church, like big churches. Yeah, like big y'all guy, like very Southern bumpkin, old school, like revival preacher style, like wears a suit every week, like probably wakes up in a suit and tie. And then the son is just like, I mean, to put it lightly, he was obese, morbidly obese. Like he was a very, very, very large man. And whatever, you live your life the way you want. But I start to have a problem with people telling you how to live your life. Like, well, it's best to, you want to avoid the periods of evil. So you shouldn't really probably drink alcohol in a restaurant, but maybe a beer in the privacy of your own home is good. It's like, bitch, there's so much in the Bible about gluttony, and you just like pig out everywhere you go. And I've seen it. I've gone out to eat with you. Yeah. You order 3 entrees, dude. Like,
what had this guy done besides be the Sunday night pastor? Like, had he had any other jobs?
No, he went to Liberty, and it was like just on the pastor track his whole life. But he had a very biblical marriage, so his wife didn't say much. But it was also one of those relationships where you're like, this doesn't make sense because you're like a Western Virginia one, and like your wife's like very attractive, like, and it's
Not the
just
weirdest thing.
it was a very strange dynamic, and there was, I don't know. He ended up, I guess he ended up getting like ousted from the church, and there's a lot of controversy after I left, and I'm very sad that I don't have the details on that, but this guy was the worst. He sucked so bad. And it was funny because they did this thing where they're like, adopt a college student. That was one of their like real big pushes, was like a way to like basically retain younger members, because everyone there was over the age of 75. And
Right.
it was so like they would have families sign up to like once a month or whatever, have them over their house for dinner, or take them out, do something. And I'm like, I got this guy. Like my wife and I got this guy and his wife, and it was like one time they invited us to that, like, what were those divey ass shitty Mexican restaurants that were everywhere, Casey?
Chi-Chi's.
It was
well, I don't know.
Senorita. That was the one.
Each one was a carbon copy of another. But it was like
a lot of them.
He invites us out to that, and we're like, all right, yeah, that sounds great. And we get there, and there's like 7 tables pushed together. There's like 15 people there, and we're just like sitting at the end of the table, like, what the fuck are we doing here? This is not what we signed up for.
Oh,
It's like, it's just a typical like do things the worst way possible as the pastor, and managed to probably pull. I mean, his wife didn't work, and he had kids, and he probably pulled a decent salary. And I saw a lot of that in my time in church, and I still have not forgiven it.
yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in churches where it's like why is this guy around? You know, like,
And he
why
feels
is this
like an
guy? Why are we
authority.
calling this guy Pastor so and so when he doesn't actually like have a church? He just kind of slides, or he just slithers his way through a bunch of small towns and somehow like milks money out of them.
And
Like,
well, actually, is everyone who actually has something to say to his bad sermons. It's like, well, actually, like, okay, fuck off.
all right, we've been having some technical difficulties here, so if the conversation sounds a little fragmented, it's because it was. So so I just got back from vacation, and
back-to-back
April
vacays.
Yeah, so we went to Dallas for like one night, saw Spirit Box and After the Burial, which was really fun. And then we flew to Salt Lake City, and then spent like a week just driving a whole bunch of national parks and stuff like that. 2 national parks, a whole bunch, but covered a lot of ground, and saw some very interesting remote places. But there was this place that we drove through on our way down to, like, we went from like Great Basin National Park area down to like Bryce Canyon National Park, and going through or driving the highways there, it's like large expanses of absolutely nothing, you know. And then like the
Right.
first town that you come across after like, I don't know, 100 miles or something like that is this town. I think it's pronounced Piache, Nevada. And we were driving through, and I noticed that like as we were driving through, there was like lines stretched over the road with like those huge mining buckets. Like it was like a conveyor belt that went down from the mountain into like a old school factory thing.
That's wild.
Like, so was it an operation? Like, I gotta hear what the deal is with this town, right? So I looked up an article on it, and it is such a strange story for this town. So it was founded in like the 1860s by this guy who is a Latter-day Saints missionary, because everything out there has some connection to Mormonism.
Oh, of course.
And what was it before it was a... Go ahead, Jesse.
Is this still an operation when you were driving by? Like, was stuff going over the road, or was it just hanging there?
It was just hanging there. Okay. It was old. Just like curious. You could tell it was old stuff.
I think things like this are funny because like before it was a town, it was literally just vast open landscape that was undesirable to anybody without narcissistic personality disorder thinking that they could start something.
Right. It's just like the middle of the sun-scorched prairie between a whole bunch of like inhospitable mountains.
Like, this
They're
is
like, let's make a
perfect.
town.
Lots of people will follow me here and worship
Mormons
me,
had the
vision
vision for that. I have to say, I
think
am
it's more
very
like nobody will
impressed with
find us
Mormons.
here. I think is here.
Yeah.
No one will find us here.
So it originally was like this Mormon missionary named William Hamblin, and he was led to silver deposits in that area, vicinity of Piochet. By it was like a Paiute Indian area, basically.
That's the
and
other reason people went anywhere in the middle of the desert, where they're like, I hear there's gold and silver, and you're like,
there's shiny rocks.
Yeah.
So there's like this financier out of San Francisco, and he kind of kickstarts this mining operation there, and it's sort of in that like gold rush era, So like all these people flood in, and it says, so I'm going to read you some of the stuff about this. It says the town rapidly became the largest mining town in southeastern Nevada in the early 1870s. Population estimates showed 10,000 people by 1871. The town, and keep in mind, this is the middle of nowhere close to anything.
You said 10,000?
The town quickly gained fame.
How far are you from water? Like, are you buying like bodies of water?
There's probably a river further down in the valley, I think, but it's not a big one, I don't think.
Not a lot of bodies of water, but you get the occasional water with bodies in it.
Yeah. That's actually perfect. Yeah. So it says the town quickly gained fame for its, quote, toughest town reputation, due mostly to confusion over the exact location of mining claims. Mine owners finally resorted to hiring guards.
This is where Kid Rock claims to have heritage from.
Yeah. Dude, the term mine guard, if you want to look that up in reference to like mining operations in the 1800s, that was a rough business.
Mine guard? You're basically like you're essentially a slave owner. You're like someone who like keeps people working, right?
Yeah, you're like hired by the basically the slave owner to beat someone to death if they speak out against the horrible working conditions that you have them in.
Yeah, if they try to take a break to slash open a cactus and get a sip of bitter water, they just beat you to death with it.
Well, in this one, it's because there's all these like competing claims, and nobody knows like exactly where they're mapped out, right? So it says hired gunmen were imported at the rate of about 20 a day during boom times to fight mining claim encroachments. Mine owners often paid the gunmen a salary of $20 per day.
That sounds like a lot for them.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like a ton of money.
It's a lot. Yeah. A more certain investment for owners than settling disputes in court, where bribery often determined the final outcome. The sheriff's office was reputed to be worth $40,000 a year in bribes alone.
Wow.
What's the year? I'm looking up I want to look up the.
Hey, what's the
1871
inflation rate or whatever?
The year of our Lord, 1871. Okay, guns were the only law, and Piochet made Bodie, Tombstone, and other better-known towns pale in comparison. It has been reported that 75 men were buried in the cemetery before anyone in Piochet had time to die a natural death.
Wait, they buried them alive? Is that what
No. Before, no one there died of like natural causes.
Oh, guy,
okay.
So only by murder.
And I don't look. This is 2013dollars.com, so I'm not overly confident that this is correct.
To you?
No, I just as the first thing that showed up when I Googled how much is $20 in 1871. But according to this website, $20 in 1871 is worth about $500 today.
$500 a day is not bad.
It's not. No,
I'd do some murdering for that.
40,000, right? Is what?
Yeah.
What was that number for?
How many bribes came out of the city hall or whatever?
Yeah, the sheriff's department was taking in 40,000 in bribes.
Dude, that's about $1 million.
In bribes.
So good. Jeez. I love that. What a great time in history. What a great time to be alive.
So, according to one reputable source, nearly 60% of the homicides reported in Nevada during 1871 and 72 took place in and around Piaget. A
Holy shit.
favorite example of the town's bloody character recalls the arrival of young Illinois lawyer and his bride in 1871. Stepping off the afternoon stagecoach, a flurry of shooting broke out, and before the couple could sprint into the hotel, 3 men were sprawled dead, still twitching in the dirt street. The bride didn't even bother to unpack, and within minutes of her arrival, hopped back aboard the stagecoach and headed home to her mother.
Gee.
Yikes.
So
Imagine
this
that.
is the part that I thought was really fun, though. This is like, there's so many parallels. This is like business as usual for government today, I feel like, in the U.S. It says, not even the building of the county courthouse was exempt from corruption. Piaget was designated the county seat in 1871, and courthouse plans were initiated. The county contracted to build the courthouse at a cost of $26,400. In order to raise the needed money, $25,000 worth of bonds were sold at a discounted rate of $20,000. So it was like, make a little investment in the town, and then we'll use that to build the courthouse. By the time it was completed a year later, costs had escalated to more than $88,000 because of alterations, cost overruns, mismanagement, and kickbacks. To finance the payment of the
Mostly
courthouse,
kickbacks.
the Board of Commissioners issued certificates of indebtedness at a high rate of interest, and by the 1880s, the debt had risen to $181,000. By the end of the century, it exceeded more than $670,000. The final payment was made in 1937, 4 years after the building had been condemned. The total cost of the Lincoln County Courthouse was nearly $1 million.
How?
They had to pay it off after it had been condemned still. That's when you know you fucked up big.
That's hilarious.
That's amazing. That's some Evergrande level.
Yeah.
Dude, I bet there's so many towns. I mean, well, would you say they had like 60% of the homicide rate around that area for Nevada? But I bet in
Nevada.
Yeah, which is wild. But I don't. How many people were living in Nevada at the time? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
true.
I bet if you just took the Midwest in general, there's at least a dozen towns that have like that during that time where people are trying to like mine, or maybe I don't know when people started like looking for oil more and setting up all the oil rigs, but that became a thing too, right? Where like everyone's like, well, we'll just slap up oil rigs in the middle of the desert constantly and hope that we just hit. Like I feel like just the Midwest is full of that. Like there's no reason to be out here. It's gambling, but also with like a long history of like violence to go along with it.
Well, the Midwest is fine. I mean, the Midwest is like it's the breadbasket of the country. It's like when you get out into the mountains, it's amazing like driving through, because I love it out there. Like I love that just like vast empty country.
Yeah, which is obvious. Look, man, we know what's going. This is obviously just like the long setup for you to be able to like murder your wife and bury her out there without anybody knowing. You're like, I've always loved it. Of course I'm out there all the time. Of course. In 30 years.
Well, that's fine.
20 years, whatever. I mean,
prove it in court.
Keep an eye on your life insurance policies and shit, but we'll see.
Murder somebody out there.
But I know when someone close to you goes missing, your love of the desert is going to come in very handy.
Check the desert. Good luck.
Like, what were you doing out in the middle of nowhere for 7 days in a row? You're like, I've been doing that 3 times a year for my entire life. So you tell me.
It's like that meme that's going around right now with that Beetlejuice guy. He's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, me? Nothing. Just hanging around.
I haven't seen it.
I don't think I have either.
But it's funny because like everybody kind of makes fun of like the Great Plains is like, oh, it's empty. There's nothing there and stuff.
Yeah.
Like you get out there into those mountain valleys and stuff. There is nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like I mean, it's nothing but sagebrush and the occasional like little tree or whatever, and like no animals. I mean, absolutely not even any bugs. it's wild how desolate it is in those
That is
places.
wild.
But
Man.
I don't know.
But all the pictures, like the videos and stuff you post, are like it's weird how beautiful it can be while being that desolate. Like,
Yeah, I see that
Yeah,
out here too.
it's
Phoenix.
incredible. So I got into I've been into a real like hole lately. Let's like reading and listening to stuff about the Donner Party. So
okay,
are you guys? Do you know the story of the Donner Party?
I do not.
no,
Okay, so it's this crazy story that like fully encapsulates the American spirit and experience, I think, in a way that like it's hard to find it elsewhere. And it takes place in the 1840s during like the push westward. And
okay,
so it's basically like there was this great quote. If you go on Amazon Prime, there's a Ken Burns documentary about the Donner Party, and it's got like some great quotes mixed up in there. But it was like there was one that was like Americans are like completely addicted to the chance to like the promise of more wealth and
Yeah,
like possible gains or whatever. And so this basically there's like all these families, and a lot of them are already established, own land. Some of them successful business owners and stuff like that that are just like they get caught up in the idea that like California and Oregon are this promised land. I mean, it was a big push at the time. This is like James Polk was president, Manifest Destiny was huge. And so there was this huge push for people to go westward and kind of like conquer the West forgotten country, right? And it was just like this, the story about this town, like it was just packed full of like con men and stuff. So there's this one particular guy named Lansford Hastings, and he's kind of like the Gary V of his time. He's sort of like a super ambitious upstart guy that has like, these delusions of grandeur about basically like colonizing California and him being the governor and all this stuff. And so like he wanders around out there and he puts together this book called The Immigrant's Guide to Oregon and California. And
okay,
it's basically just like a big sales pitch for like Oregon and California are like the land of milk and honey and
oh yeah,
everything's
okay.
great here. He goes out of his way to talk about how like Mexicans are lazy and we should take the land from. I mean, just par for the course type stuff.
right. What'd you expect
He
for
is like
someone
such an American
establishing
figure.
America?
Yeah,
Yeah. So he's trying to get people to move out west, right? And he's got a few other people that are kind of in on it with him, some mountain men characters and stuff like that. But so in an effort to like get people to go to California specifically, like what people were doing beforehand was they were taking the Oregon Trail like almost all the way to Oregon and then turning south and going into like far northern California.
are you sure they weren't getting dysentery?
They were definitely getting dysentery. Lots of dysentery. Lots
That's
of
Oregon
death by
Trail joke.
diarrhea in this story.
Oregon Trail.
But so he comes up with this thing that becomes known as the Hastings Cutoff, which is like a shortcut. And you should definitely go to California, and it's not even inconvenient because this Hastings Cutoff is going to shave like 300 miles or something like that off of the total trip, right? But
And by
Lansford
horse and
Hastings,
buggy, that's several weeks. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
oh
it's a
yeah,
lot.
that's significant. But Lansford Hastings has never actually traveled this cutoff. It's all just secondhand information and maps and whatnot. Like he's really winging it.
that's
So
incredible.
these people,
The audacity. To go through life with that level of confidence. That guy's never not been hard. I mean, his dick is always hard. The confidence he has. It's
dude,
unreal.
to give you an example of this guy, so he like fought under the Confederacy or something like that later on after this, and then like died trying to set up like settlements in Brazil for ex-Confederates that were like fleeing the country.
Wow.
A
He's,
real
he's just a lunatic.
Wow.
real patriot, as some might call him.
Yeah.
So The big thing with this Hastings cutoff is that you turn south through like southwest Wyoming, you go down through Utah, and then you cross the Great Salt Desert right below Salt Lake.
And right at the end of the desert is a giant, and he makes you cut your dick off. And that's the joke.
You
It's
best
like,
you
he
best bring
gotcha.
him his beans. So there's a lot of people going west. There's a lot of like resources and stuff like that for people that are trying to plan their trip and stuff like that. And this group of guys from Illinois and Missouri and all that stuff, they form this party that later becomes known as the Donner Party. And their goal was to use Lansford Hastings cutoff to get into Northern California. Now, like, one of the most important things about taking the Oregon Trail or whatever west is like you got to leave at the right time of year, because
Okay.
you've only got so much time to travel, 2,000 miles or whatever it is to get there. And like, it has to be late enough, because none of these people are just like riding horses, right? They're like, they're in covered wagons, which are tough, and then you're driving cattle and stuff with you, because I mean, you got to show up with whatever you're going to use to start your new life. So they have big
You're
herds
not
of
thrown in a
livestock.
U-Haul. You're traveling a caravan.
Right. You got to take tools, you got to take food, of course, you got to take clothing, boots, and then, all the stuff that you need to take care of these animals and stuff. So like, you have to leave late enough in the spring that there's grass and stuff for your livestock to eat so they don't die along the way, but early enough that you get there long before, the blizzards start in the mountains, because that's the final point, is like, you got to cross the Sierra Nevada mountains. And the Donner Party, the people that make it up, do not leave on time. So they were supposed to be out of there like no later than the first week of May. They're like waving goodbye like May 25th or something like that. So they're like 2.5, 3 weeks late getting onto the trail.
Is there a reason for why they're late? Or is it just like do they not know that you need to leave at this time? I mean, I feel like other people have done this before them, right? Like they should have known. What's the story there?
Oh yeah, they knew. It's just
they're just tenacious.
Ego. I mean, it's like none of those signs apply to me, because, we've got the gumption to make this work. And they're like, we're going to save like 300 miles or something like that in weeks on the trail using the shortcut.
That's it. So they're really...
So their whole trip is based around this shortcut.
Yeah.
So they take off and they just immediately hit problems. Like, the Kansas River is up over its banks, so they can't get across. And like, if in those situations, like, you either have to build a raft to take all of your stuff across, like your wagons, cattle, everything across the river, or you've got to like caulk your wagon watertight and float it across the river. So it's an ordeal. Like, it sucks no matter how you do it.
Yeah.
But that was like the first problem. Then there was like other things that came
I love that that's the first problem. Like, most people have been like, well, fuck it, we'll try again next year.
Right.
That's what they should have done.
How far were they out? I mean, they had
like,
plenty of time to go home. You're like, we have wagons pulled by horses in a river that's over flooded. I mean, what? I don't know. What'd they do?
So they ended up like ferrying the wagons across the river.
Okay.
But it's May 31st by the time they're crossing this river in like eastern Kansas. So they're behind schedule. And this is the easy part of the journey, right? This is like through the plains and stuff.
Yeah,
so
it's flat.
They get out and like they meet a couple of different people along the way at these camp stops and stuff that are like, what's your guys' plan here? And they're like, well, we're going to take Hastings Cutoff. They meet this one guy in particular.
So far, this reminds me a lot of when me and my neighbor, when we were like 12, went into my woods to dig for buried treasure. And after we got 3 inches into the dirt and hit a root system, gave up. They could have learned a valuable lesson from that kind of gumption.
Exactly. Well, so they meet this guy who's like a mountain man and fur trader along the way when they're in Wyoming. I think it's in Wyoming. So it's still long before they get to the turning point, right? And this guy had just taken Hastings Cutoff across on horse, and he's like, "Don't do this. Like, do not take this route. It's way longer than he says it's gonna be. The desert is like it's impassable in wagons with cattle and stuff. Like, don't do this." And they just kind of like write the guy off. So like they're late getting into all these different stops and stuff. It comes finally time for them to like make a choice. Like, okay, are we turning south or are we going to keep going west towards Oregon? And it's a group of like 90 of them decide to take the shortcut.
Nice.
So they get down.
I can't wait to find out how every single one of them dies.
So they get through southwest Wyoming and they're in the Wasatch Mountains, like right before you get to Salt Lake. This is just east of Salt Lake. And they're supposed to go up this canyon. And they get there, and there's a note from this Lansford Hastings guy. He was supposed to be there to guide them through the route down to the desert, right? He's not there. And so they find this note, and it's like, this canyon is impassable. Come find me, and I'll tell you which one is a better route to go on. So they just have to like go look for this guy. And they finally find him. It takes days to find him. They finally find the guy, and he's like, "Oh, I can't go back with you, but here, we'll climb to a high spot, and I'll point out where you should go."
It started out as a simple game of hide and seek.
That's why you always leave a note.
So they start up into this canyon, and it's like completely choked with like brush and boulders and alder and stuff. And they literally have to like chop their way up this canyon. It takes them like a month to get through this canyon and like and up over to the point where they get to like Salt Lake. So one thing that I forgot to mention, one of the reasons that the guys decided to like take the shortcut after all is there's this guy who's like one of the most famous mountain men and fur trappers and stuff named Jim Bridger. And Fort Bridger was like one of the last stops before you hit the cutoff. And Jim Bridger was like very invested in people stopping at his place, Fort Bridger, before they go to California. And this cutoff was like the road to his place, basically. So he stood to make a lot of money if this cutoff worked. So the guys, from the Donner Party, they ask him, they're like, "Hey, we were warned, somebody told us that this isn't a good route." And he's like, "Oh no, it's a level road with plenty of grass and water. It'll be a breeze." And like, it's immediately not that.
Yeah. I love this.
So
I love it.
They're behind schedule. It takes them a month to chop their way through this canyon, and then they emerge out into like the Salt Lake Valley there, right near modern Salt Lake City, dude. And there's another note from Lansford Hastings that says,
it's like a scavenger hunt. It's like the world's shittiest scavenger hunt.
It really is. It really is. And it's like he could just go there and help them through it, but he's like, I don't want to be around when the water dries up.
He got here before us. He got here before us in time to leave a note, but
where the heck is he? So they find this note from him at the last watering hole before the desert that says 2 days, 2 nights, hard drive to water. And he had said in his book and stuff that the Great Salt Desert was like 40 miles across. So they start going and they keep going and they keep going because it's actually like 80 some miles across. And so what was supposed to take them 2 days, right? They gathered up grass and stockpiled as much water as they could on their wagons and stuff for the trip. It's supposed to take them 2 days. It takes them over 6.
Oh, geez.
Jesus Christ.
Day and night.
Dude, you're right, Jesse. If you turn this into a comedy series, that would be amazing. It would be so good.
It's the guy who's leaving the notes is somebody like Christopher Walken. Just
yes.
Oh yeah, you go down a little bit further.
It's very like
or like
British humor. I feel like
yeah, it is that.
So
good.
Like
Simon
3
Pegg.
days in, the water's gone, and they're splitting water with
the cattle. Stuff
I mean,
too.
it's not just what's that?
Oh, so the cattle and stuff too, like all the livestock. Otherwise,
Yeah,
if that dies,
exactly.
there's no point.
So like day 3 of their cattle not drinking, they just like
Drink cow
apparently
piss.
livestock. Oh man, can you imagine?
They just
Ugh.
tie tubes to the cow dicks and just it's like a
Ugh.
camelback. That's actually it's originally it's like cow back, and then they realized camel's better marketing.
You just hook up a straw to your bull schlong and oh
Yeah.
man, that's so gross.
It's like
Apparently, if a livestock gets thirsty enough, they just stampede. They're just like, we're
Is
gonna
that
run
true?
until we step in water. Yeah. So a bunch of their cattle and oxen just take off.
I
Like,
always learned from
never to be
cartoons that
found again.
stampedes were entirely the result of one animal getting stung by a bee, and I'll continue to believe that.
Yeah, or hyenas biting at their ankles.
Yeah.
So they lose a whole bunch of livestock. Several of the families, I mean, they lose their oxen. They just have to leave their wagons behind, take as much stuff as they can carry, and continue on foot. And they got little kids. I mean, they're literally like the mothers of these stories. It's wild, man. They literally made like half this trip carrying their children. It was just unbelievable.
And what are the dads doing? Just not asking for directions.
Just carrying a bag full of bolts.
Just the ones they've picked up along the way in case they come in handy later.
Yeah.
Be like the guy, I'll hold the food. I'll take the hardtack pack.
It's like, where'd the
So-
whole bag of Doritos go? And he's standing there with orange fingers, like, what Doritos?
I had to shed weight. So they get to the other side of the desert. They are destroyed. I mean, they were destroyed after hacking their way through that canyon. They're wrecked now.
How many
But
people
they
left?
get to like the
Ish?
Humboldt River.
Do you remember like how many people left and how many people made it there?
So only a couple had died at this point. One old lady
Okay.
died of old age. Somebody else died of some illness, I think. But like not many people have died yet, right? But things are about to get real quick.
That's crazy because if I was in that situation, I would have killed myself after like day
I
two.
know. I was just gonna say I'd be one of the first ones to go. It'd be on purpose.
Dude, it's the amount of like indescribable misery in this
Yeah.
story.
Oh,
It's
I'm not built for
unbelievable.
that kind of suffering.
And we're not even to the bad stuff.
I'm a
yet.
white man, for God's sake. I am not built for suffering like that.
so we'll breeze through like some of this here, but they reach the river. They kind of try to recuperate as much as possible and keep going because now they're way behind and they know it. It's a race, right? Because you got to get over those mountains before the snow falls. So they get to like their last stop. I forget what it's called. Anyways, they
Last
reach
stop,
their like
Oregon.
last stop. The Truckee River, I think, is where it's at before they go up into the mountains. And they take like 3 days to recuperate, fix the wagons that they still have left. And like they wake up one morning, it's like mid-October. Paiute Indians showed up in the middle of the night and killed like 21 of their oxen. Just like
Just
they
to
apparently
fuck
said
with-
that like
that's
That's
the
just like a real
eight-
fuck you. Like,
yeah,
that's what you get.
that's the 1800s equivalent of slashing tires.
basically, yeah, it was. They shot him with poison darts, apparently. And then
Oh, jeez.
So
there was
good.
one of the things I was listening to, they were saying that like they were walking through this canyon and they could hear like the Paiutes up on the edges of the canyons laughing at them.
Like,
They're
that's-
just, like dying.
They're like, that's what you get for calling us Indians.
Yeah,
So,
that's ridiculous.
It's just one thing after another, but they take these few days to recuperate and stuff, and then they wake up one morning, they're on the backside, the east side of the Sierra Nevadas, and they look up and they're white. And they're like, oh no! So they just like pack all their stuff up and take off trying to get up the mountain and over. Because you gotta get, I mean, it's not like you take this little windy road through the mountains, and gain a little bit of elevation. Like, you're going over the summits. It's like 10,000 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So they start up and after this thing, and they get like clear up top and can't make it. Like, the snow it's snowing like crazy. It's deep. They got these 2 Indian guides that are like helping them out, throughout this thing. And these guys are like, dude, these 2 Indian guides should be on like the $1 bill or something like that, because they stuck with these people way longer than they should.
Yeah.
And they can't find the road because there's so much snow, and the mules and stuff like that are all slipping and falling. Like, they're saying that like they would lose their footing and just fall face first into the drift, and then like have to paw their way out.
Is this before the shortcut still, or is this shortcut?
This is
the last wing of the shortcut.
Okay, I couldn't remember where we were. So
imagine how miserable that is, though. You don't have any type of like real snow gear. You're just like flopping around. Snow's getting in your whatever form of gloves or shoes you have constantly. Like, that's miserable.
Oh yeah. Well, and they don't make it. So like, they can't make it over the summit. And so they're like, we gotta recuperate. We gotta wait for the storm, the weather to break or whatever. This is like mid-October, right? It was an early blizzard. And so they retreat back down the mountain a little ways, and camp out at a couple of different spots. And this happens to be the worst winter in recorded history for that area. They got 68 feet of snow that.
Oh crap!
Holy shit!
Oh,
and like
68 feet of snow,
dude. Like they
That's
like
so
literally
much.
just like lose all their animals. They're out of food. They're out of food by the time they get up there.
Oh, for sure.
All they've got is like their
they ate all their
emaciated
pets.
cattle. Right. Oh yeah, no pets live through this. But so, like, long story short, these people end up having to spend the entire winter on the side of this mountain.
Jeez.
And there was like 90 of them that started out from the cutoff, the beginning point of the cutoff. Like 46 of them die.
I hope the story ends with them killing their leader.
Like the guy who's leaving the notes.
Well, so it's a mix, but like all the Donners except one young girl die. They end up like the reason that the story's famous on top of everything else is that the survivors, most of them had to eat the dead in order to live.
Yep.
Gross.
So they cannibalized their family members and stuff like that to make it through the winter. And dude, it is the craziest story ever. I mean, I just kind of got like obsessed with it because it's so nuts. Every point in the story is so nuts and so unimaginable and how like miserable it was. Like, even trying, like they sent out some relief parties. Like the one of them that's famous, it was a group that went out to try to like get help and make it over the mountain. They went out on homemade snowshoes. They called themselves the Forlorn Hope.
Wasn't everything homemade back then, though?
Yeah, that's fair. But they were talking about like snow blindness. Like I've heard that word before, but I didn't really know what it was.
That's like when the sun shines on the snow and you actually go blind from it, right? From the light reflecting.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It like damages your eyes.
Constant exposure to it.
Yeah, like you have to it takes a couple days to recuperate from, and then you can, you regain your vision and stuff like that. But like, a pair of polarized sunglasses and you're fine. You don't have to worry about that problem at all. But like these people start up the summit. Right. Trade some beaver pelts or something. But they like the relief party starts up the summit and they get like up close to where they're trying to go. And they're literally like blind up there. Yeah. I mean, it's just like wild. One thing after another.
It's truly incredible that despite obviously you could go on and on and on about all the horrific shit people did to each other in the name of discovery. But the fact that like you're talking like women and children on this trip and up until they all died in the mountains or whatever, you're like, it's like they just kept going. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that there weren't people who were like, all right, we're gonna go home now. This obviously
Yeah.
is a bad idea. I it it baffles me that you would take your kids through that you wouldn't call it quits, that you would
Yeah, at what point do you not
try
just say like,
trudging
"Okay,
up 'em.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead. No, no, no,
finish."
you go.
I was gonna say, you wouldn't say like, "Let's go back to whatever the last town was that we saw."
Right,
Whether it was
anything.
500 miles or, whatever, like, what are you doing?
That's
For
I
what?
think
In the
that's what
name of, like, riches that you'll probably never see?
In
Like,
the name of
did none of these
shortcut.
yeah, did none of these people think, like, whatever was promised to us at the other end of this is something we'll never experience because we're all going to die?
I think, yeah, like, I don't understand. I'm sure there's reasons why they stayed up on the mountain. And I think it might be as simple as like they just couldn't get back down.
Yeah, that's true. I guess
Like,
this could be.
I mean, you think about it, there's 6 feet of snow on the ground.
Right, right.
You can't lead your livestock are your only lifeline at this
But
point,
before
and you
that,
cannot leave them out of there, you know?
like,
Yeah.
remember the
It's like
river that we first talked
yeah.
about? Like, that's big strike one, but, like, even getting to those like, that second problem, the second problem, I don't know if anyone would normally refer to a second problem as the first, but, I just can't imagine you going like, "Yeah, so far this trip has been bad, and it's clearly not going to get better."
I think that's one of the crazy things that's when you try to like put yourself in the people's shoes, you think about like, you get to that point, you've ignored a lot of warning signs.
Yeah.
And now your family's going to die on this mountain because you decided to keep going. And like it's clear from like their writings and stuff that like they were grappling with that. Like I've doomed my family to like this horrible death.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, that's so dark.
It's tough, yeah. And not all of them died, but like nobody made it through unscathed. I mean, it like the psychological damage and stuff, even for the ones that survived, was just
Oh,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
yeah.
Nobody had a healthy relationship after that.
There's a so while we were on this trip, we like went to a couple of different spots that were like part of that story. Like we drove across the salt desert, which is just makes it even more unimaginable that they crossed that on wagons. But there was a in Salt Lake, there's like this big Mormon pioneer history center thing. And so we went there and they had a thing on their deal about the Donner Party and stuff. But there was a story that I learned about in there that takes place like 8 years after the Donner Party. And so Brigham Young and, after Joseph Smith gets assassinated, Brigham Young kind of like the guy in charge, and he decides that Salt Lake City is where they're going, and so they forge their way out there and stuff. And in true Mormon fashion, they kind of start like they put together a fund to finance more Mormon pilgrims to come across and make the trip to Salt Lake, right? And so they're doing it in covered wagons a lot like, the Donners or whoever else, but wagons are expensive and they're slow, and there was like a couple of years of bad harvest, so they just didn't have the funds to really finance a bunch of these wagon trips. So Brigham Young says, what if we just had these people pull carts?
Like a rickshaw?
Yes, like a rickshaw. like a giant backwards wheelbarrow with 600 pounds of stuff on it. And they did.
That's
Like
unbelievable.
it's an amazing amount of organization. Dude, I have a lot, like, I gotta say, I have a lot of respect for the Mormons when you see like what they built in such a hostile place. Because that is not like the fruited plain out there where they decided to settle.
Right.
Isn't that the case with a lot of people who have like delusional understandings about their position before the Almighty God? You're like,
100%.
it's like how it always goes. They're like, no, we can beat all odds, and it's just like, I want to hear more stories of the people who didn't. Like, what are the religions that tried to get started but didn't make it simply because they didn't beat the odds in that first battle?
Well, like 1,000 people were dead in Guinea or whatever because of Jonestown. That one didn't work out.
Nope, that one didn't. And that's why we don't have a religion based off of that.
So it's interesting contrasting the story of these two wagon parties with the Donners, because like
we see where God comes in. I get it. No, now you're like we see the Mormon God is real.
3,000 people made their way to Salt Lake City pulling carts. That's nuts.
That's ridiculous.
That is nuts.
It's like 1,200 miles that they walked pulling carts to get to Salt Lake City by hand through the miserable heat in the summertime and stuff like that. But you know, the Donners,
I recently, as everyone knows, was at Disney, and that was really hard. Just walking through the parks.
That's a good comparison, Sam.
With a stroller and a couple of backpacks. That shit's challenging. So
sometimes we go on a hike and we put our dog in a backpack. It's unbelievable. How do people do this?
Yeah.
Well, if you could just talk to Brigham Young now, you'd be like, "Been there, brother."
Yeah. You know, we have a lot in common.
You and Brigham, for sure. The Lion of the Lord, and I don't know, what are you, like the ocelot?
Yeah, sure. The prairie dog. I did see prairie dogs at Animal Kingdom, and they were cute.
How many people do you think were getting pulled in carts by other people?
Well, sir, there were certainly some old people and some children that got pulled. But so like the Donners, you know, like their part of their mistake was leaving way too late, right? They left in like, you know, late May to start the trip, and they were starting from Independence, Missouri. The Mormons in this story were starting from like Omaha, Nebraska. So it's a little closer, but not a lot. But there's two wagon parties, two of these pull cart parties that got stuck in much the same way as the Donners. They take a different trail to get to Salt Lake, but these guys are like, it's August, and they're contemplating whether or not to go, right? And so they have a meeting with these church elders, like all these Mormon
over
church
by the
elders.
time they get to the mountain.
And they go, you know, so-and-so, one of the elders says that we should spend the winter here in Nebraska and then go next year. And all of the other church elders say, God's going to protect you guys. You should go. So these two cart parties, it's like 900 people, start pulling their carts across Colorado and stuff, and they get stuck in a blizzard. And 200 of them die. Because the guys in the church were like, God will protect you.
Yeah.
200 out of 900?
Yeah.
Honestly, it should have been more.
Odds,
so I think God really pulled through on that one.
Dude, it's funny because like you're reading about this stuff, and like there's only, I haven't done as much reading on this one, but like everything that I've found is basically a Mormon source. And none of the Mormon sources mention, you know, eating your grandma.
Yeah.
But I imagine that if there's if there's 900 people out there starving to death, I'm guessing that they probably did the same thing that humans have done in that situation since the beginning of time.
It's the only time Mormons had an excuse to eat ass.
That is a valid point. Count your blessings.
Yeah. And God protected them.
Oh, man. So, yeah, it would suck to be a pioneer.
Yeah,
I don't want to do it.
The worst time in American history, for sure. I would have,
by and large,
I would have been one of the 200 dead, or on any pioneer journey, I would have been one of the ones who died. Absolutely.
I'm dead at the river at the beginning. I drowned myself.
Back to basics basketball camp was difficult for me in 12th grade. So
it'd be like day 5, and I'm like, I have a headache, and there's no Hostess donuts here. Like, I'm going back.
Oh my god. That was uplifting. I love this.
Yeah, good
That was
stories.
a happy one.
Well, fellas, that was fun.
It's been nice fellowshipping.
Basically a history professor.
I feel like it's been a bit.
I'm a history professor.
With our vacations and everything, we haven't really we haven't podcasted together in weeks. It feels good again. Feels good to be back.
I enjoyed it.
Very good time. Well, thanks for joining us, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
And for all you listening, if you like the show, leave it a rating wherever you listen to it. iTunes, Spotify, whatever. And join our Discord. You can find a link to that on our social media page. There's a link tree. Join up. Gotten some new people lately. You should join. It's fun. And that being said, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Peace.